You ever look at the walls of your own home and wonder if they are like hidden rules baked into the very space you live in? Secret rules that say how big or small or even how tall a room can be? Well, there are. And today we're going to pull back the blueprints and decode them.
So let's just cut right to the chase with a really direct question. Can a room in your house, I'm talking a bedroom, a living room, can it actually be illegally small? I mean, is that even a thing?
And the answer, which might actually surprise you, is a huge, definite yes. In South Africa, the official national building regulations put a hard, legal minimum on the size of the spaces we live in.
Now, to really get how this all works, we have to go straight to the source. So our guide for this whole explainer is the South African National Standard, or SANS 1400, specifically Part C, which is all about dimensions. Think of it as the official rulebook.
All right, so here's our game plan. We'll start with the minimum size for an entire house. Then we'll zoom in on the rooms inside, look up at the ceilings, and then get to the really important part, why these rules are even a thing in the first place. So first up, let's look at the big picture. Before we even get into talking about individual rooms, what's the absolute minimum legal size for a whole house? Okay, the first number you really need to know is this one, 30 square meters. That's the magic number. According to the regulations, if you're building a standard permanent house, it has to have a total floor area of at least 30 square meters. But then, get this, for certain types of buildings, that number gets sliced right in half, just 15 square meters. Yeah, this much smaller minimum is for buildings that are classified as temporary. And to put 15 square meters into perspective for you, we're talking about the size of a single-car garage. It's a tiny, tiny space. And believe me, there's a very specific reason this is allowed, which we're going to get to. Okay, so we know the minimum for the whole house. Now, let's step through the front door and see what the rules have to say about the rooms inside. But first, we need to get a key definition from the rulebook, and that's the term habitable room. Now, this isn't just a bedroom. The law defines it as any space you actually live in for sleeping, eating, cooking, even working. This is super important because all the big rules apply specifically to these spaces.
So here it is, the fundamental rule for individual rooms. With a couple of exceptions, any habitable room has to be at least 6 square meters. And this part is crucial. To stop people from building weird, long, skinny rooms, no side of that room can be less than 2 meters long.
So what does 6 square meters actually feel like? Well, picture a standard king-size bed. That alone takes up about 3.5 of those square meters. So we are literally talking about a space that can fit a big bed with just enough room to walk around it. That's it. That's the legal minimum.
All right, so we've covered the floor space, but what about the ceiling? Let's look up and see what the rules are for vertical space. How high does a room actually have to be?
For the most part, the rule is pretty straightforward. For most of these habitable rooms, the regulations demand a ceiling height of at least 2.4 meters. But it gets a little more complicated when you have things like exposed beams getting in the way. Okay, the code gets really specific here, so follow me. If you have exposed beams, a few things happen. First, any single beam has to have at least 2.1 meters of clearance underneath it. But, and here's the real kicker, if all those beams together cover more than 30% of the ceiling area, the legal ceiling height isn't measured to the ceiling anymore. No, it's measured from the floor to the bottom of the beams.
So we've seen some surprisingly small numbers, right? 15 square meter homes, 6 square meter rooms, which brings us to the biggest, most important question of all. Why? Why on earth are these legal minimums so incredibly small?
Well, the answer is actually spelled out right there in the official commentary for the regulation. This quote gets straight to the heart of it. The dimensions are small on purpose to make affordable housing possible. It's a very deliberate policy choice.
And this is the crucial context. These tiny minimums make it possible for people to build something called a core house. The idea is that a family can build a very small but perfectly legal starter home. Sometimes it's just one room and a bathroom, and that gives them a foothold. From there, as their finances allow, they can add on and expand the house over time. It's really a pragmatic balance between having safety standards and making homeownership accessible.
So these numbers, they aren't arbitrary at all. They create a legal, accessible starting point for people to own their own home. But they also force us to think about a much bigger question. By setting a legal minimum, these rules draw a line in the sand between what is simply affordable and what is truly a dignified home. And it makes you wonder, where do you think that line should be drawn?